Om Shri Sadgurave Namah. I bow down at the holy lotus feet of true Guru, whose words of wisdom are like mighty sunbeams to dispel the darkness of ignorance. Guru, the beneficence personified, takes the disciple to meet the Supreme Being. I offer my obeisance again and again to such a benevolent Guru. The glory of a true Guru is indescribable in words. Whatever little I would or could say is only because of his compassionate grace. Om. Hello, viewers. Welcome once again to this series of talks on Santmat in English. This is the sixth episode of talks. Since past 4 episodes, we have been discussing the true nature of God because it is verily important to understand how God really is in order to know, to find, to understand the ways to attain to Him, so that we could swim across the sea of transmigration. We could overcome the wheel of transmigration and be happy forever, never to fall back in this painful cycle of births and deaths. So welcome to this episode, and I again begin with my presentation. Let me share my screen first. As usual, we'll be first having a brief recap of the fifth episode, the previous episode, and then we'll continue to discuss the remaining aspects of the true nature of God. In the past session, we had seen that God is beyond name or sound and form or light. That is, He is a Nāmarūpātīta entity. And whatever we see here around us is in fact, as an interplay, a web of sound and light only. And therefore, it's not surprising that presence of light and sound, worship of light and sound, is found in one way or another to be present in almost all prominent religions of the world. If you go to a temple, then we can see a lamp burning there, and there are bells, conch bells, etc., signifying light and sound. If we go to churches, we could find candles burning, at the same time chime. If we go to a masjid or mosque, there also chirag, some kind of light is found, and then their priests, they give their calls, invocations through loudspeakers. So again, they signify the presence of light and sound. If we go to Buddhist temples, there also we find lamps burning and big bells. So everywhere, in some form or another, we find that light and sound show their presence. because these two form the very essence of creation that we inhabit. Even the body, our body also, it is alive, working and useful only so long as it is pervaded by light and sound. If a person falls seriously sick and we call a doctor, then he first checks our pulse and then he says he also senses the temperature. And if he finds that our body has gone cold and pulse is no longer beating, indicating the absence of both light and sound. Body getting cold means that light is invariably associated with heat. Wherever light is there, heat will also be there. They are two inseparable forms of energy that coexist. So body getting cold is an indication that that divine light has left us, and pulse beat being absent, okay, heartbeat getting down to zero means that vibration or sound also has left the body, and then doctor declares sorry, he or she is no more. So therefore, our body also is in a functioning state, is alive only so long as light and sound are there in it. So therefore, sound and light will find they form the two most prominent means of attaining to that supreme Lord or that infinite being. Both of these, light and sound, have emerged from that infinite entity, but that God or infinity itself, it transcends both light and sound. Though light and sound issue forth from him only, but in his true elements he is beyond each of them. Because we have seen, be it light, be it sound, it invariably calls for the presence of some kind of vibration. And vibration presupposes some empty space so that something could move, something could oscillate, something, say, could go in a motion. That infinite entity, because he is densely packed all throughout and there is nothing that could lie outside him, so there is no space whatsoever for him to move in any direction, and therefore there is no vibration in that infinite entity, and hence he is motionless, is completely free of any kind of vibration, and therefore he is beyond both light and sound. So therefore he is said to be beyond name or sound and form or light. This we had seen in the previous say talk also, and we had seen that the sounds and lights are formed at their various levels. In the gross universe that we live in, we find gross sounds, like the sounds I am speaking, like the sounds produced by animals and birds, the movement of various bodies, animate and inanimate, etc. And then there is light, which is slightly subtler than the sound. And then we have got sounds which are even subtler than the visible light. And as we move from this gross sphere of creation, gross plane of creation, into subtle or astral realm, there we'll find again that there are different levels of light and sound present, subtle light and subtle sound. And as we go on penetrating and moving towards increasing order of subtlety, we'll come across sounds which go on turning, which go on becoming subtler and even subtler till we reach the one only subtlest sound, which is known as quintessential unstruck vibration or anahatanad. why that is called so will be a topic of some of our subsequent talks. And finally, from the subtlest sound, if we continue our inner journey, then we move from subtlest sound to the state of soundlessness, which is none other than He Himself. That is that supreme being, supreme sovereign, that infinite entity called God or many other names in different languages and regions that we have seen earlier also. Moving further, we had also seen that spirituality, true spirituality, is absolutely logical, scientific, and it moves across, cuts across the boundaries of narrow-minded sectarianism. And if we have a look at the discussions we have held so far, we'll find that we have not been talking of any particular religion. It is religion neutral. And that is why true spirituality accommodates. It has a space for people coming from all kinds of faiths or sects or religions. There is space for everyone and anyone without, say, uh, abandoning their religion, without forsaking the faith they practice, can adopt this spiritual practice and can attain to that complete salvation or liberation from all kinds of bondages. That is, a Muslim can remain a Muslim and yet practice the spiritual methods of meditation. A Christian can stay Christian, a Vedic follower can remain a Vedic. There is no, say, region, there is no requirement, there is no need for anyone to forsake whatever belief he, say, has, and yet he can be truly spiritual. So, therefore, it is completely impartial school of thought. And then we move on to our next present. I think I've not maximized my slides. Yes, sorry for that. Then now we move on to take this discussion further in this sixth part of the lecture. What is said He, when we say He, we mean that infinite entity, because we have started with the hypothesis of one single infinity that exists everywhere, and it also exists where there is no everywhere. That is, it transcends all creations. So such an infinite being, it contains all. It contains all, but nothing can contain him. What does it mean? Because he is of the vastest possible extent. So anything and everything, any being and every being must lie within it, within that infinity. Because if anything exceeds that infinity, then the bounds of that infinity have been found out, and it will cease to be infinite entity. So whatever exists, it exists within that infinity, so that we could say that he contains all, everything exists within him. We'll also see in future that everything is produced by him, produced out of him, and in essence everything is he himself. So that our Vedas say that everything that we see is essentially Brahman alone. Everything is God himself in true elements, and there is nothing apart from him that exists. So what it says, Sarva Khalu Idam Brahma. Everything, each and everything is nothing but he himself. But that is a talk for say later. What say we are trying to discuss here, that everything is contained within that infinite entity, and nothing is in a position, okay, is capable to contain him, accommodate him, because he is boundaryless. He is infinitely expanding in any direction, and for to conceive of anything, any container which could accommodate such an infinite entity, it has to be bigger than that infinity. And when we say bigger than that, that means that we are trying to again conceptualizing the bounds, the perimeter or the circumference of that infinite being, which destroys its infiniteness. So therefore, nothing could be bigger than infinity, and a container has to be bigger than the contained. So therefore, if something tries to contain the infinity, it has to be bigger than infinity, which is, as a misnomer, it is a meaningless statement, illogical statement, because nothing could be bigger than infinity. So therefore, it is said that though he contains all, there is nothing that could contain him. Then another statement, he is said to be Gunatita. Atit we have seen means beyond. And guna is known as attribute or quality. Attribute or quality. The infinite being or the God is attributeless. Okay, non-qualified. He has to be free of all attributes. He has to be beyond all attributes. Basically, or broadly speaking, there are three kinds of gunas or attributes that have been defined in scriptures. They are called as Raj, Sat, and Tam. And if you attach that word gun to each of them, then Raj will become Rajoguna, Sat will become Satoguna, and Tam will become Tamoguna. Now, let us understand what is meant by these three gunas or attributes or qualities. Rajo guna, that is, Raj, it implies our worldly hankerings, our mundane attitudes, our passions for material achievements, okay, which makes our minds restless. We are always hankering, running after one thing or another. We are always seeking goals in this world, which could be of different genres, which could be of different kinds. Somebody is after making his body, somebody is after sports, somebody is after arts, somebody is after wealth, somebody is after, say, scientific discoveries, etc. But almost all of us are running after one or another kind of worldly goals or desires, which keeps our minds in a restive state, restlessness for things worldly, for things mundane. And this type of attitude or quality is known as Rajogun, which pulls us towards worldly cravings or achievements. Different from it is tamoguna. Tama means darkness. Tam literally means darkness. And therefore, this tamogun, this refers to our darker propensities, okay, which makes us lethargic, which induces ignorance, okay, which makes us ignorant. Our attitude becomes ignorant, and excessive indulgence in sensage or sensory objects. Okay, so if we are more after sleeping, suppose somebody invites you to some important programs like the spiritual talks, and I think that, oh, where would I go? It is much better to stay at home and have a good sound sleep. Nothing could be better than that. Or even if we go to such a satsang or spiritual gathering, there also we find such talks boring and fall asleep. Then such kind of, or we say seek pleasure in violence, in torturing others, killings, then all these types of activities, they are induced, they are driven by this guna, darker propensities called tamo guna. And another one, third one is sato gun. Sat means truth, virtuosity, righteousness. So all good virtues in us, all noble qualities, that is feeling, fellow feeling, okay, if our heart bleeds to see humanity or even other creatures suffering, okay, if we donate something to the needy, we find pleasure, we find ourselves a sense of satisfaction in us. Okay, if we find pleasure in spirituality, if we find pleasure in spiritual practices, meditation, okay, in benevolent activities, and this is an indication of predominance of sato guna, that is virtuous tendencies, righteous properties, or noble qualities. In order to progress in our spiritual attainments, this satogun is required initially. Though our goal is to attain to the state of attributelessness, because that infinity is attributeless. But what out of these three guns, the satogun is most helpful in taking us towards that goal of attributelessness. Now, that infinity, why would we say that it is beyond either of these three attributes? The thing is that all the three attributes or qualities are present to a lesser or greater extent in each one of us, except some truly accomplished beings. So, leaving those rarest of rare exceptions, these three qualities are found in almost all. But we'll find that one of these is dominant, predominant in comparison to the other two qualities in a particular person, or even for a specific person during different moments or hours of the day. These could be as a waxing or waning. So accordingly, sometimes we find, say, tendency to go to sleep. Sometimes we feel restless to complete our office work, etc. And sometimes we say an indirect force within us pulls us to attend such programs of spirituality or religions, etc. So the same person, these three properties keep on dominating, waxing or waning, becoming stronger or weaker. But in an overall analysis, people could be categorized as one dominating in Raj or Sat or Tam. Okay, so though all the three are present, but depending upon which one is dominant, a person could also be categorized as either a Rajoguni or Tamoguni or Sato. Then our goal is to move towards attributelessness, because that infinity is beyond either of these three attributes. Why would that be so? Let us try to understand this with, say, a schematic diagram. Like, say, if we take a particular object, the students of mechanics would appreciate that this, say, more easily. That is, most of the substances that exist in nature are anisotropic. That is, they have got a quality of called anisotropy. Opposite to that is isotropy. Isotropy means it behaves identically in all the directions. So suppose we take an object and we subject it to a force in this direction. then how this object will behave will be different from how it would do so if the same object is acted upon by the same force in different direction and again in a third direction. The object remains the same, but its behavior, its response differs depending upon in which direction it is acted upon by a force which tries to move it. That is, a force which tries to induce motion into it, which tries to bring about a change in its state. So these three directions in which the force is acting upon this, say, body could be compared to, just by following an analogy, as a Rajogun, Satogun, and Tamogun. Like, and what is the object in this case? This object could be compared to our mind. That is, if our mind moves in a particular direction, oscillates in a particular direction, then it would be categorized as a be dominating in Rajogun or Satogun or Tamogun. It will depend upon in which direction our mind moves predominantly. So accordingly, a person is categorized as say belonging to either of these three categories of gunas or attributes or qualities. And if we conceptualize that, let us have an object which is acted upon by three forces in of equal magnitude and at say an angle of 120 degrees. That is, we take a pole or rod and it is pulled apart in three mutual directions with equal forces at 120 degrees. Then what would happen to this object? This object will not feel any impact of either of these forces because these three forces would say counteract each other and it will bring about a state of static equilibrium. Okay, what is this? This is also a state which is found in nature, that all the three attributes are there, but they are so distributed in equal proportions that they are not able to cause any disturbance, any oscillation, any agitation, and such a state of nature remains in a state of static equilibrium. All these things we are going to see in some of our subsequent lectures. Now, what I tried to explain by producing this example is that we could think of again motion of minds in different ways, agitations of thoughts, okay, thought processes in our minds in different directions. And accordingly, we could conceive the existence of the three gunas, and they are related to agitation or oscillation or movement of mind in different ways. But what about infinity? We have seen that no motion is possible at all in an infinity. It could neither move in this direction, or this direction, or in any of the direction. No agitation could be produced in it. And if it cannot be agitated in any of the ways possible, then what does it mean? That it suffers neither from Rajogun, nor from Tamogun, nor from Satogun. That is, it is beyond all the attributes or qualities, and therefore, say that infinite being entity is said to be attributeless or non-qualified or say uh, free of any types of qualities or attributes. This is another say aspect of or the true nature of infinity. When time permits, let us take this one at least, because still there will be some more say dimensions left. It is also said to be, infinity is said to be beyond both asat and sat. Okay, these two are Sanskrit terms, sat and asat. What, what do they mean? Sat means something which is real in the sense that it is unchanging. And on the other hand, to the contrary, there is another type of creation or being which is say referred to as asat, which is unreal or in the sense that it is ever changing. See, we have seen in some of our earlier lectures that only the infinite being is, say, without a beginning and an end. It is unborn and immortal. Everything else has got a beginning and has got an end. That is, it has birth and it also meets with death. Now, anything apart from that infinite being or God is actually asat, unreal. Because what do we say to be real? Which is eternal, which exists always. It's not that it is seen now and it will not be there at some point of time in future, or it was not there at some point of time in the past. Such a thing could not be said to be truth or real reality. So everything which has got a beginning and an end is said to be unreal, okay, or illusion, illusory. Okay, that is called as Maya. Okay, or Anatma. Atma means soul or supreme soul, and apart from that, everything is non-soul. Okay, or non-infinite. Then everything actually is, say, unreal or untrue. But there are two kinds of such unrealities. That is, everything is unreal, everything is illusory, but there are two stages of that illusion also, two broad categories of illusion. Okay. Maharshi Mehi Paramhans Ji Maharaj would say that there are two forms of Maya. Maya means illusion. Maya is again a compound word which is formed of two words, Ma and Ya. Ya means that, and Ma means not. That which does not exist. In fact, that which actually does not exist, but produces an illusion of existing is known as Maya. So everything other than God himself is Maya, is illusory essentially. But there are two broad categories of Maya. One is ever changing and at the same time with end. Okay. That is, it is limited, finite, and at the same time, it is continuously, constantly changing. Okay. Right now, it is of one kind, and the very next moment, it changes its forms, like our bodies. Our science, biology tells us that our body keeps on changing every instant. Okay, number of cells die every instant, every second, and new, say, cells are getting produced, are getting born every second. Okay, we were infants when we took birth, and our bodies went on changing, 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 and slowly first it grows and then it starts decaying, and finally it is dead. Similarly, so about all living beings and so about all non-living beings. Even the mountains, they also show constant change. Okay, when the mountains are getting formed, then that is when they are during their say stage of orogenesis, then they are growing. And once that orogeny is complete, then forces of erosion act upon them and they start decaying. degenerating, and even mountains also die. And so about all stellar beings like Earth or Sun or any other, say, object, stellar objects. So everything is constantly changing. So that which is constantly changing, at the same time, it is bound to come to an end. That is, it is finite in terms of space and time, as well as it is ever changing, is known as asat. And on the other hand, say there is another category which does not change. It remains as it is, uniform, constant, in the same state, so long as it exists. So far as its life is there, its existence is there, it will be in the same state. Its qualities will not change. It will be uniform. But sometime or other, this is also bound to meet with its end, with its death. So there are two categories of illusion. One that is changing, ever changing, and at the same time it is finite. That is, it is with a beginning and an end. And on the other hand, we have another kind of such an illusion, which is not changing, which is constant, uniform, but it is bound to end. Okay, maybe say very long time from now, but it has got a fixed life and it is going to end. So that this latter type, which does not change but is finite in nature, is known as Sat, and that which is ever changing at the same time, it has got an end also, is known as Asat. So there are two broader levels of creation. One is known as Asat Prakriti. Prakriti means nature or creation. Asat, which is ever changing. It is also known as Jad. Jad means inert or insentient or non-conscious. Okay. Now we'll see this in a bit greater detail in the next lecture, because today I think we are reaching towards the end of our time. And at the same time, it is also known as Sagun. Sa means with. Gun we have already seen, attribute. So with attributes, that is attributed. And it is also known as Apara. Para means higher. A means not. That is not higher, that is lower nature of, lower level of creation. So Asat, which is ever changing, Jad, which is insentient or inert, Sagun, attributed, and at the same time lower order of nature. This is one Asat Prakriti. And there is another type of Sat, another type of Prakriti or creation, that is known as Sat Prakriti. Sat means that which is unchanging, and in that sense it is known as real also, though it is not exactly real, but in comparison to this, because it's not changing, so long as it exists, it remains uniform, constant in its composition and its, say, all essence. That is why it is known as real also. And because it is the closest to that infinite being, we'll see all that, say, a bit later. So this is known as a Sat Prakriti, real or unchanging nature or creation. It is also known as conscious, in contrast to this is Jad, this is Chetan. Jad means inert or insentient or non-conscious, whereas Chetan is conscious or sentient. And this is Sagun with attributes. This is Nirgun, that is attributeless. This is Apara, that is say lower nature, lower order of creation, and this is para, higher order of creation. And that infinite being, it is beyond both asat and sat. Asat is ever changing, at the same time it is say temporary, it is bound to come to an end, whereas sat is unchanging. This is ever changing. Sat is unchanging, but this also is going to end. This is also temporary. So both of these are, say, unreal in the strictest sense of the term, and that infinite being is beyond both types of creations, asat and sat. What does this jad mean? That we'll see in the lecture to come. That is the next lecture. And then there are uh, a few more aspects or dimensions of that infinite God that we'll be seeing in the subsequent lecture. So I think for the time being, let us stop this discussion here itself. Uh, for the remaining part, we'll meet again soon. This time again, there was a little bit of delay. That is, the interval became a bit longer. I'll try my best to come again without this delay. And I hope I have been able to explain what or to convey what I intended to. If there is any shortcoming or any suggestions as how to improve this lecture further, all such suggestions are welcome. If you find anything lacking or say short in this lecture, again, I'll invite all such suggestions or feedbacks with uh, with an open heart and mind. So kindly don't hesitate to say give your feedback or suggestions so that this discussion could be more fruitful, could be more productive, and could be even better. So thank you all for your patient listening and viewing. Namaste, Jai Guru, Radha Swami, Vaheguru, Satyaram Sa. See you soon. Om.